Hey guys, this is Brad from Blue Nile Farm. Welcome to episode number 19 from our Farming from Scratch series. Today we're going to talk about considerations and selecting of 100 horsepower tractors that may be used in your operation. You know, when we're talking about finding the first type of tractor, when we get into this type of horsepower, in my mind, these are tractors roughly about 100 horsepower and up. And they're primarily used for tillage. You know, if you're planning on tilling the ground and you're going to plow the ground and you're going to plant something, or if you're going to harvest hay, this is when you want to get into these size tractors and these size machines. Now, don't get me wrong. If you can do hay with less horsepower, but ideally for comfort and for when you're getting into disc mowers and heavier size equipment and maybe some round balers, you're better off with a 100 horse tractor. They cover the ground a little bit better in my mind. But primarily you're dealing with tractors that are basically used for tillage, and that's really what it gets down to it. And I would think that if you're a brand new farmer or you're just starting out, unless you're immediately going out and going to do crops and plowing the field and planting and harvesting 5, 10, 15, 20 or more acres, you know, you will definitely would rather have a bigger tractor. If you also work a full-time job, you want to have enough tractor to cover enough ground in a day to make it worthwhile. And secondly, you know, cost factor on used pieces of equipment like this are reasonable. I mean, you can go out and find a 100 horse tractor from anywhere from and above from $7,000 to $8,000 up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. It all depends on what you're looking for. But the bottom line, you can find a lot of good used pieces of equipment for a relatively good price. The downfall is though, if a machine breaks down, it's going to be quite pricey. This tractor right behind me, I bought this Oliver 1855, is about a 98 horsepower tractor on the market. And I'm going to consider that roughly in the 100 horse range. I wound up having to put a new engine into this after numerous years of having it, and it cost me 20 grand. And right now it has a Cummins in it. It's about a 150 horse tractor, and it's, you know, it just got crushed by my building when it came down, and I'm going to wind up getting that thing repaired. This other tractor is a Ford 7710. I purchased that tractor for $15,000, and I also had that engine blow, and it cost me another $20,000 as well. So, you know, in the end, you're going to be pumping money into tractors that are used when things do break down and you have to put new engines in, and it's a little bit pricey. On the other hand, once the engine's in, you know, the theory is you're going to have many years of good service, and it's worthwhile. You know, the rule of thumb I kind of talked about before, when you go out to a dealership and you're trying to buy a tractor, you got to think about the price is about $1,000 per horsepower. You know, so, you know, you go buy a 70 horse tractor, you're looking at $60,000 to $70,000 price tag. So when you go look at a 100 horse tractor, you're looking at almost, you know, $80,000 to $100,000 just for that size tractor. So they're very pricey and it gets very expensive. And you need to kind of keep in your mind that if you can find used, this is the way to go. But most tractors, when they get close to about 5,000 hours, they have a potential to have engine failure, and whether it blow, you know, you blow a head gasket or the valves fry out or something's going to happen, and you know you're going to do a major repair. So it's very important that you take that in consideration when you buy this. But again, you can't beat the price for used, and if you find and do some shopping, and you get lucky and you get the right piece of equipment, it works for you. You know, I bought, when I started farming, my first tractor was my Ford 800, which is we'll call a compact because it's under 40, about 40 horsepower. And then I wound up buying a 100 horse tractor, which was this Oliver. And the reason I bought the Oliver was it was cheap horsepower. But the problem is this tractor was limited because it's mostly a tillage tractor. It doesn't have a loader. It's not four-wheel drive. And most of the small attachments that come with it that I would find at an auction would fit normally a utility size tractor, something around 70 horse to 60 horse, or, you know, even a small 40, 50 horse compact or 40 horse compact tractor. So anything I would pull with this would be too small. Plus, the width of this tractor is close to 8 foot. So, you know, you have a width issue as well. And that means you need over an 80-inch implement. So a tractor that's about 100 horse will pull a 10-foot disc mower for a hay operation, and that's basically the bare minimum that I would use, and they do a great job for me with my tractors. and that's why I use a 100 horse tractor. Also, you'll find when you get into the bigger tractors, 100 horse and above, these tractors will ride the field a lot better. They'll feel better in the field. You're not going to get beat up around on rough ground like you do on the smaller tractors. It's kind of like a rule of thumb: is the smaller the tractor, the more you're going to get beat up. As you grow and you get into bigger tractors, they can handle rougher fields a lot better. And that's why I like it when we deal with hay, because of groundhog holes and other things. But don't get me wrong, I've been knocked around pretty well with these machines as well. Also, you're going to pay a lot more money for a four-wheel drive 100 horse plus tractor than you would with a utility tractor. But again, four-wheel drive is nice. And the thing with when you get these 100 horse plus tractors, a lot of times guys put duals on the back end if they're only two-wheel drive. And if there are four-wheel drive, a lot of times guys don't bother, and sometimes they do. It all depends on how heavy in the tillage that they are. I really like these tractors, but the downfall is I don't use them year-round. They're used for one specific task. I might hook them up to a trailer. They might do an odd job here and there, but for the most part, they're not used like my utility tractor is. My utility tractor, I think, is the best investment that money can buy when it comes down to the choice between the three sizes. 100 plus, or the utility I use that as the go-to for everything. And but they all have their place. In a good hay operation, I think most people will agree. If you're on the average hay farmer size with the average baler, if 100 horsepower line is between 100 and 150 is a good range to use for a hay operation. And what's nice is with my utility tractor, which is my Kubota or even the LS that's 55, they can pull hay rakes and hay tedders, and they also have an active role in the hay operation as well. Compact tractors for me are way too small. They'll never get the job done, and I don't make mini bales, so I wouldn't even think about that just because of the time element. But you got to get the right tractor that'll work. Now, as far as implements go with these tractors, these tractors will have basically remotes. You always want to have 2 pair of remotes for your 100 horse tractors. A lot of times everything is going to be mostly a hitch where you're pulling it. And that's where the remotes come in, where you can lift with the remotes and drop different implements. Sometimes you have semi-mounted plows, 4 bottom plows, 3 bottom plows, all the way up to 6 bottom plows or even bigger. And a lot of times you may use the 3-point, at least the arms, to lift a plow. And then they'll also work off remotes to raise and lower the equipment. So remotes are very, very important to 100 horsepower tractors, and something to take into consideration. And especially when you're doing tillage nowadays, everybody's getting bigger. They're not going smaller. And you can find a lot of cost-effective discs, between 10 and 15 foot range, and a lot of the tools and implements from a farm at farm auctions and so forth. They're going to be a lot cheaper to utilize for these size pieces of equipment. So with this bigger tractor, you can get more cost-effective equipment on the cheap versus going out and buying small little attachments that you can for your compact or your utility size tractors. So, if you're going in the agricultural realm and using a tractor specific for tillage, 100 horsepower tractors are going to be your best bang for your dollar when it comes to that. The other thing too is how many hours you're going to actually spend on these tractors. In the summertime for me, and I do hay, and I do, like I said, about 150 acres of hay. I'm on these tractors all summer long, and I try to get as many cuts as I can. So for me to sit on this tractor for 8 hours a day isn't uncommon. And for the hay operation, these tractors, that's when they get used. But when we're not making hay, and if I'm not reseeding a hay field, I don't use them that often. A lot of times I use my utility tractor for a lot of the other secondary types of jobs, whether I run a chain harrow down or I overseed. I'm going to be using the smaller tractors, not these bigger tractors. So these, again, are used mostly for either producing hay or doing tillage for the ground, and that's it. They do basically nothing else. So, you have to be prepared for that too. And a lot of people, if you're going to spend your money, you want a piece of equipment that you use all the time, not something that you just use, once in a while. And that's why I think it's a lot better to concentrate on a smaller tractor. But again, if you are looking at seriously tilling ground, this is what you need to pay attention to, because there's so much more out there that you can do with these machines. Now, there are certain pieces of equipment that you need a bigger tractor. And what's nice with the bigger tractors is you're going to have also a lot of different ranges where you can actually have almost like a creeping gear all the way up to faster gear, you know, and it helps out a lot as well. These things travel down the road better generally. You know, ideally, most of your bigger tractors you're going to have with cabs. I prefer cab over a non-cab. You know, I have this Oliver 1855. The cab is up, but I do have a cab for it, and I like to have cabs on my machines just to keep me out of the sun and away from bugs and hornets and you know things that actually could hurt you. I kind of like to stay away from them. And sometimes hitting branches and stuff at least gives you a little bit of protection in the cab, and I kind of like that better personally. But there's times I do like to be in open air as well, and if you have allergies, you definitely want to be in the cab, keep you away from some of the allergies that may affect you. But you know, 100 horse tractors are fun to run and they're fun to use, but again, you're just going to be using them on a limited time basis, especially when you get started. When I do land clearing, a lot of times I like to have a 100 horse tractor where I can bring a disc in and disc around. And one of my biggest factors that I'm looking for right now in my hay operations is finding an offset disc so I can start. I don't like using plows, I'd rather just tear up the field with an offset disc. And I want to find one that's small enough that I can pull with these. And, you know, I need the horsepower to pull. So it's very important to have that. The other thing with these bigger tractors too, they're about 10,000 to 15,000 pounds generally, if not sometimes more, depending how big you get. And you know that's not something that you can just throw up on a trailer and haul with your pickup truck. You know these are bigger machines. You're probably going to need a CDL to move them around, and they're not that easy. My 100 horse tractors are fine because I can load them up, and I do have a CDL, and I can put them up on a big trailer and I can haul them. But for a lot of people, generally, once you have them, you have to drive them from point A to point B. And that's where they get a lot of road time. You know, again, with a bigger tractor, you're going to have more fuel. They're not going to be as fuel efficient. You're going to take more maintenance. You know, if they're older tractors, you have to worry about finding parts. As far as brands go, it all depends on what you like. You know, again, this is a shop around thing. If finding something that you're looking for, and you know, I think overall though, if I wasn't doing traditional farming methods, realistically, these machines are not conducive for my type of operation in general. You know, and I think that if you are going to plow or you're going to disc, you're going to work a field, or you're going to produce something, and you need the horsepower, look into a bigger machine. I think there's really something that you can't go wrong with. And they can go up to hundreds of horsepowers. But I'm stopping here at the 100 horsepower range because for most people that are starting to farm and on the small sizes, at least where I live in northeastern Ohio, you know, a lot of guys, I'm not out in Iowa where these guys are farming thousands of acres, because by then, if I was starting to farm, sure, I would be jumping right into a larger size tractor without question. And for them, these tractors that are 100 horse are nothing, you know. But when you get into you know, real big agricultural areas where they're doing, you know, hundreds and thousands of acres, you are definitely going to need the right horsepower. And, you know, you're going to have to do some serious shopping because tillage is the name of the game there. And it's something that you'll need. But for generally, most people that I think are starting to farm on small acreages, you know, unless you're going to do anything very agricultural where you need to do tillage, you know, a 100 horsepower tractor might be overboard for you. And I don't think you're going to be too happy with that. I'm never say you can't go big enough, but sometimes too big for certain things are a limitation. You know, driving a bigger tractor, you know, they get stuck, and then when a bigger tractor's stuck, it's harder to get out. I've been stuck many times with my Oliver because it's two-wheel drive, and it got buried, and I had to get my neighbor to pull me out of the fields. That's before I have my own equipment. You know, these things are heavy, you know, and when they do break down, they're cumbersome to move them around because you're kind of stuck. The downfall is a lot of these tractors, at least the older tractors, don't have loaders. And sometimes you may not even want a loader on some of these tractors because they're all stick and they don't have the shuttle shift that some of the newer tractors do that make them more appealing, you know. And I kind of like having the shuttle shift for me. So some of the bells and whistles on the newer tractors are better than the older tractors. But again, for cost effective, cheap horsepower, you can't go wrong with some of these older tractors. You can find them and you can still get parts for them. And they're not that hard to work with, and they don't have all the emissions issues that other ones actually do. All these bigger tractors are either Cat 2, Cat 3, or Cat 4, depending how big you go. So that just means that they're going to have bigger hole sizes. They're going to have bigger lifting capacities. They can still be used with hydraulic top lengths. They can use all kinds of different types of attachments. But like I said, for what you would do on a day-to-day size attachment, they're going to be more ag-based. And that's really the only thing I could say about this. There's really not too much I want to really talk about with these, other than the fact is that unless you have a specific need, I don't think if you're beginning to farm that they're going to be the tractor for you unless you are going to do tillage. If you're doing tillage, then you have to get the right tractor and the right attachments. And that's probably the biggest key, is to get a fleet of tractors where they're all about the same size, and you're going to probably need more than one. Normally, a lot of guys have two, at least two. And the reason for that is a lot of times, just like with hay, when one tractor goes down, you can't afford it. You need to have more tractors to keep you moving. And that's kind of probably why I have, the tractors that I do, and I'm looking for another one, because I've had several breakdowns that shut me down for a long period of time, and you can't afford to be down without a tractor. So, buying multiple tractors isn't uncommon. And secondly, when one goes down, you want that other one to pull the same attachments that you currently own, so you can get the job done. If one goes down, you have two. And another thing with bigger tractors, it's nice to have one piece of equipment hooked up at all times. Like for me, I like to use one tractor specifically to run my disc mower, and then I'll have another tractor that I'll use it for other things. And I just like to concentrate on one tractor that works best for me in my operation. I don't have to change it around, or I can pull it to one field and then go grab another tractor and do something else. But every tractor has to have its purpose, and that's kind of what you're looking to do. And I think that, we're going to talk about on another episode mostly about how to shop and look at talk about different attachments and where to find this equipment, because that's another little trick. You can spend a lot of money going to a dealership and paying a lot of money, and there's ways around it where you can try to find different piece of equipment that'll suit your needs at a more cost-effective rate sometimes. And again, knowledge of what you're buying is going to help you out a lot too. But even when you buy 100-horse tractors, think about this. If you can get a four-wheel drive, it's probably better depending on where you're at, like in northeastern Ohio. I love four-wheel drive tractors because I've been stuck before. And I do have one, this Oliver is a two-wheel drive machine, and I do have a set of duals for it. But I do hay, and most time I'm in the summertime where it's dry, and getting stuck is going to be a lot less likely. But if I was doing early spring planting and late fall harvesting, then you definitely would be thinking about four-wheel drive because the issues of getting stuck. Duals will help, definitely. But again, getting stuck in some of this muddy, swampy ground is no fun. And, I've been buried before with duals as well. So it's just a real pain. So really, I'm really going to kind of end this here as far as talking about 100-horse tractors. I think there's a lot of them on the market. Look for some of the older ones. Find a brand that works for you. Try to find a dealer in your area that works to your favor. And again, they are not going to be used like your compact and your utility tractors are. And, I prefer, if I was going to pick one tractor to start off with on size, I'd probably pick the utility tractor, because you can do more with that and try to stick around the 70-horse range, because you can do everything with that machine for the most part. And when you get into bigger tractors, like I said, tillage-wise, then you start looking at this type of size tractor, and what fits your niche and what you plan on doing. And, the size of ground that you're going to farm and what you plan to do with it is going to make a big difference. But think ahead, don't think all of a sudden you're going to go farm 1,000 acres and you have none to farm. You may start off slow and grow with time, but try to get equipment that, you're going to think ahead. Where am I going to be and what's my plan? And it'll make a big difference. So 100-horse tractors and above, they're on the market. They're cheap horsepower. You can find a lot of them. But again, plan on spending, for a decent one, $25,000 to $30,000, and you'll be off to a good start. But anything used, and I don't care whether you buy a compact, utility, or 100-plus horse tractor, when an engine goes, it's going to be quite expensive. And you just be prepared to eat the bill, because it is an expense, and it's just like buying a car, but it's an essential evil to doing this agricultural stuff, is you got to have the right equipment, because without the right equipment, you can't do the job, and it makes a heck of a difference. And I learned more of that over the last several years, because I bought a lot of equipment, I've expanded a lot, and I've had a lot of breakdowns, and it's cost me a lot of money in the long run. But in the end, I think it's worthwhile because it's something you like to do. And but having the right equipment is the key to success. And there's a lot of guys out there to try to skip on that, and they make a big mistake. And that's kind of why starting the series off is to try to help people guide and make the right direction. If you go out and buy a 100-horse tractor as your first tractor, for a lot of you, you may be very well disappointed because your vision and what you can do with it isn't going to be as fulfilling. And that's why I want to say that if you're going to do tillage or you're going to do hay harvesting and that's your plan and that's your goal, and you're going to do it at a larger scale, look at these size tractors because it's definitely there. If I was doing, say, even hay, I'll use hay as the best example. If you're just going to make hay and you're going to do less than 50 acres, you do not need a 100-horse tractor. You can get one, but you don't necessarily need one because a lot of times they sell smaller units, smaller mowers, smaller. You're not going to need the equipment that you need to do larger acreage. And if I didn't do larger acreage, I wouldn't even think about running this. I bought in the 100-horse tractors and I started smaller because I started buying bigger equipment, and that elevated me to the 100-horsepower line. But if I was going to talk about a tractor that's used 365 days a year, the 100-horse plus tractors are not it. It's going to be more in the utility tractors. I use them all the time. So with that said, the next thing we're going to cover is we're going to talk about where to go to purchase farm equipment and what type of equipment that's actually out there, and how you go out and find the proper tractors and look for different places where you can get a good deal on trying to find some of this stuff. Because a lot of times when you're new to farming, you don't know where to turn, who to talk to, where to get the right piece of equipment, and hopefully I can help you out, give you a little bit of guidance, show you what's actually out there. So stay tuned for episode number 20 because that's kind of the direction we're going, and hopefully you guys got a little bit of something out of this last podcast. Talk to you guys later, and be safe.